Good evening to our viewers in Korea. Hello to those around the world. And this is a special edition of Arirang News. In open defiance of United Nations sanctions barring from using ballistic missile technology, North Korea has launched a long-range rocket carrying what it said was a satellite. Now, this is Pyongyang's sixth launch of its kind and comes on the heels of a nuclear test 4 weeks ago. Another provocation by North Korea. We have a team coverage tonight. First, here is our Kim Ji-yeon, starting with Pyongyang's rocket launch roughly 13 hours ago.
North Korea launched a rocket from its main Dongchang launch site near its northwestern border with China. South Korea's defense ministry said that its pea-sized surveillance planes, Green Pine radar and Aegis destroyer detected the launch just 50 seconds after it occurred.
Our Sejong the Great Aegis destroyer was able to detect the missile at 9:31 a.m., but it disappeared from our radar at 9:36. South Korea and the U.S. are analyzing if the launch was a success.
North Korea says the rocket's first stage fell into the West Sea as planned. The fairing, which encases the payload, fell into the East China Sea 7 minutes after the launch. The second stage fell into the Philippine Sea. North Korea's state-run Korean Central Television claimed that its rocket launch was a success and that it had entered the Earth's orbit about 10 minutes after the launch.
North Korea has successfully launched an Earth observation satellite called the Gwangbyongsang-4.
This marks the sixth rocket launched by the communist regime in its ambition to develop a nuclear-tipped long-range missile, and comes a little over a month after the regime conducted its fourth nuclear test on January 6. The rocket is believed to have a range of some 13,000 kilometers, enough to reach the United States. South Korea's defense ministry says there are no reports of damage from rocket debris in South Korean territory as of Sunday afternoon. North Korea notified the International Maritime Organization on Saturday that it had moved its launch date up to sometime between February 7th to 14th, after previously announcing it would conduct the launch sometime between February 8th and 25th. Experts believe the weather was a big factor in the change, as weather conditions are a crucial factor for a successful launch. The Seoul-based Korea Meteorological Administration says there were sunny skies in North Korea on Sunday morning, while cloudy skies and snow are expected on Monday and Tuesday. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The South Korean government is assessing the situation and discussing further countermeasures. Now, shortly after North Korea's rocket launch, President Park Geun-hye held an emergency National Security Council meeting. She called Pyongyang's move a grave challenge to world peace. Here's our presidential office correspondent, Song Ji-sun.
Immediately after the launch, President Park Geun-hye called an emergency National Security Council meeting and condemned Pyongyang for its continued provocations against peace and stability in the region and the world. She said the North's action is a direct challenge to the international community and a clear breach of UN Security Council resolutions banning the North from developing ballistic missile technology.
더구나 이번 장거리 미사일 발사는 북한 핵실험에 따른 UN 안보리 제재 결의가 논의되고 있는 시점에 이루어졌다는 점에서 평화를 소망하는 국제사회에 대한 도전 행위입니다. 북한의 장거리 미사일 발사는 핵과 함께 그 운반수단인 미사일 능력을 더욱 고도화하려는 것으로서 동북아 지역은 물론 전 세계 평화와 안보에 대한 중대한 도전이자 어떤 대화에도 응하지 않고 오직 체제 유지를 위해 미사일을 고도화하려는 것입니다.
President Park also condemned Pyongyang for only caring about its nuclear program and turning its back on its people. She also said the South Korean government would rev up its security capabilities in alliance with the United States.
현 시점에서 무엇보다 중요한 것은 북한의 위협에 대처하기 위해 우리 군의 현존 전력을 효율적으로 활용하기 위한 대책을 강구하는 것입니다. 아울러 한미 동맹 차원에서도 대응 능력을 강화시키기 위한 모든 필요한 조치를 취해 나가야 할 것입니다. 북한 정권은 고통받는 주민은 철저히 외면한 채 오직 핵과 미사일 개발에만 몰두함으로써 시대의 흐름에 역행하는 잘못된 길로 가고 있습니다.
At a briefing after the emergency meeting, National Security Council Deputy Director Cho Tae-yong said the next task for Seoul and the international community is to devise strong and comprehensive sanctions on Pyongyang that will truly have an impact on its behavior.
The South Korean government and the international community have invited North Korea for dialogue on numerous occasions, but Pyongyang never responded. In the meantime, North Korea earned itself time for the further development of advanced nuclear weapons. The only way to get Pyongyang to give up its nuclear program is by devising effective and strong sanctions, including UN Security Council resolutions, so the regime is forced to give up its nuclear ambitions.
President Park called on all ministries to do their best so that the South Korean people can live without fear, and also called on lawmakers to pass a pending counterterrorism bill against North Korea's unpredictable provocations. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's defense ministry said a few hours ago that it has retrieved objects that are believed to be part of North Korea's rocket fairing. Now, this will provide crucial information on how far Pyongyang has come in its missile development. Here's our Connie Kim.
Will South Korea be able to get more details of North Korea's ballistic missile capabilities from fragments of the rocket? South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Sunday a South Korean Navy ship has retrieved what's suspected to be a fairing dropped by Pyongyang's long-range rocket launch on the same day. The object was found southwest of South Korea's Jeju Island about 4 hours following the launch. This is the 6th time Pyongyang has launched what it calls an Earth observation satellite, but it's widely viewed as a cover for testing an intercontinental ballistic missile. Adding weight to the international community's view, South Korea's spy agency has reportedly said what North Korea claims to be a satellite is far lighter than a proper one, saying Pyongyang's satellite should be viewed as a long-range ballistic missile. Referring to the North's technology advancement, South Korea's defense chief has said the North's projectile has entered into orbit. However, Han was cautious to say the ICBM launch was a success, as it has not been confirmed whether the North's rocket re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, a crucial technology to hit the U.S. mainland. Seoul's defense chief said the South Korean military is monitoring the situation and preparing for any further provocations.
The Ministry of Defense has convened a meeting to assess the situation, discuss countermeasures, and ordered full alert level of its military. Seoul and Washington are fully equipped to respond immediately to any additional provocation from Pyongyang.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff noted the high possibility of another abrupt provocation, including Pyongyang's testing of a submarine-launched ballistic missile. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Within hours of the launch, South Korea's defense ministry announced that Seoul and Washington would officially start negotiations on bringing the U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD, or Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, to the Korean Peninsula. Our national defense correspondent Kim Hyun-bin is live at Seoul's defense ministry. Now, Hyun-bin, we've learned that Seoul and Washington are set to formally discuss deploying this missile defense system, which can target short, medium, and intermediate ballistic missiles in flight, if I'm correct.
That's correct, Kanyang. South Korea's defense ministry said this afternoon that Seoul and Washington will start discussing the possible deployment of THAAD to the Korean Peninsula to better counter North Korea's increasing nuclear and missile threats.
To better counter North Korea's increasing threats, South Korea and the U.S. have agreed to enhance our missile defense and will officially discuss the possibility of deploying THAAD to the Korean Peninsula.
The THAAD deployment issue was raised by the commander of the U.S. Forces Korea during an emergency meeting at noon today with South Korean Defense Minister Han Min-koo and U.S. Ambassador to Korea, Mark Lippert.
This was an alliance decision recommended by CFC Commander General Scaparrotti. We also have seen growing support for this voiced in the ROK on the issue of THAAD recently. To that end, it is time to move forward on this issue. We look forward to close consultation and coordination on THAAD, as well as dealing with the threats to peace and stability posed by the DPRK.
The U.S. has 7 THAAD batteries, 4 on the mainland, 1 in Guam, and 2 reserves, one of which could be deployed to South Korea.
Well, Hyun-bin, THAAD has surely been a touchy subject in this region for years. What is so significant about the missile U.S. defense system, and why has it been such a sensitive topic?
Well, China and Russia are strongly against the system as they believe it will give the U.S. an upper hand in regional security, as well as the system could take down missiles that are aimed at the U.S. or regional allies. Now, the ministry says that if THAAD is deployed to the peninsula, it could defend half of the Korean peninsula if attacked, creating a strong nuclear umbrella. The ministry added that THAAD can not only take down ICBMs, but also Scud, Rodong, and Mustan missiles. THAAD is also equipped with a state-of-the-art X-band radar with a range of up to 1,200 kilometers, meaning most of China's key cities, including Beijing, will be exposed. Now, China's foreign minister expressed deep concern about the rocket launch, but urged the U.S. to take other countries' security interests and regional peace and security issues into consideration.
Now, for the past few years, Hyun-bin, South Korea has been saying it'll develop its own missile defense system. What's happening to that, and who will be covering for the defense costs for deploying THAAD to the peninsula?
Well, the ministry says it will keep on developing the Korea air and missile defense, and that is a separate issue from the THAAD deployment. And the ministry reiterated that KMD is a low-altitude missile defense system, making it the last tier of aerial defense, and pointed out it is only able to cover a small area. Now, THAAD, on the other hand, is a high-altitude aerial defense system that could cover a large chunk of the Korean peninsula. So if THAAD is deployed, the ministry says that Seoul will provide the land and facilities to maintain it, while the U.S. would assume all other costs and maintenance fees. Now, there are speculation that the U.S. would push Seoul to purchase THAAD in the future, but the Korean government says it has absolutely no intention of purchasing the $1 billion system now or in the future. Back to you.
That was our Kim Hyun-bin at the National Defense Ministry. Now, let's go over to our Foreign Affairs Ministry. Our Kwon Soo-hwa is there with international reaction and efforts to make Pyongyang pay the price for its latest series of violations. So, what do you have there?
Kanyang, Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry is operating on an emergency work system, meaning it's on high alert. And officials here have been busy making contacts around the world with their partners ever since North Korea pushed the button on its rocket launch. And the international community was quick to respond to North Korea's latest threat. The U.S. and Japan were among the first to condemn the North for its missile launch. The White House says it's a clear violation of UN resolutions and that Washington will do all it can to protect the U.S. and its allies. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry called for, quote, significant measures to hold the DPRK to account. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had a similar response.
Despite our repeated pleas to refrain, we find it absolutely unacceptable that they have launched this missile. To launch a missile after conducting a nuclear test goes clearly against the UN resolution. We will respond resolutely, coordinating closely with the international community.
China, North Korea's closest ally, which has until now resisted calls for stronger sanctions on Pyongyang, expressed its regret about the launch.
Under the current circumstances, China hopes North Korea can exercise restraint and proceed cautiously on the satellite launch issue, and not make any moves that could further increase tensions on the peninsula.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has urged North Korea to halt its provocative acts through a statement released by his office saying the launch violates UN resolutions and is deeply deplorable, especially given that it comes despite the united plea of the international community against such an act.
Now, so speaking of the United Nations, Security Council is expected to hold an emergency meeting on the North missile test less than 3 hours from now.
That's correct, Kanyang. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, Seoul had requested for an emergency meeting at the United Nations Security Council right after the launch, and that was followed by another call from the U.S., Japan, and South Korea together. And that is why the 15 member states, which Korea is currently not a member of, will be convening for that meeting at the UN headquarters in New York on Sunday, 11 a.m. And that's Monday at 1 a.m. South Korea time. The UN Security Council is still in the midst of drafting a new resolution on the North's fourth nuclear test from January 6th. And that's why there is a lot of attention on how North Korea's rocket launch will affect the sanctions, which means whether stronger measures will be taken or if there will even be another new resolution. Now, Seoul's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se told reporters earlier in the day he's considering a trip to New York, if necessary, to discuss the details with UN Security Council member states.
As talks on a new resolution against North Korea's fourth nuclear test are in progress, the rocket launch is expected to spur further discussions at the UN Security Council.
Now, Yoon and his Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, his Japanese counterpart that is, agreed to close bilateral and trilateral cooperation with the U.S. during a phone call earlier in the evening. And Yoon is expected to talk with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry soon, and we just got informed that the phone conversation will be at 11 p.m. Korea time. And Yoon also said that the talks with Kerry could also continue at the annual Munich Security Conference later this month. Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry released a document Sunday that outlines South Korea's stance on punitive measures it seeks from the UN against North Korea. It says, quote, "An extraordinary threat requires an extraordinary response." So we will have to see how strong the consequences will be for North Korea this time around. That's all I have for now. This has been Kwon So-ah reporting live at Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry. Back to you, Konyang.
All right, thank you, Soa, for that. So what exactly is running through the mind of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un? How will this latest development affect China's position? Live in the studio with me to provide us a more in-depth look into the situation is Kim Tae-woo, chair professor at Seoul-based Dongguk University. He has also served as the president of Korea Institute for National Unification. Professor Kim, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi, good evening.
Now, the launch comes on the heels of a fourth nuclear test, which, of course, North Korea is still on the receiving end of an international condemnation. In fact, the UN Security Council had been in the works of designing a series of sanctions, a package of sanctions for North Korea for its nuclear test. It makes us wonder, what is North Korean leader thinking in carrying out such a provocation in launching a rocket launch defying international condemnation?
Okay, you are actually asking why North Korea is developing the nuclear capability. Since nuclear weapon and delivery vehicles, the missiles are going together, it is the same package. Well, basically, North Korea believes nuclear capability is the eventual means to protect the survivability of their own system and regime. So that's why having the nuclear capability and making their possession of nuclear weapons as a status quo is critical, vital interest to them. But more specifically speaking, North Korea has in mind the variety of effects emanated from the nuclear weapons. Domestically, internally, nuclear weapon is a symbol of prestige for the young leader and legitimizing its own control base. Toward the U.S., it makes North Korea becoming equalized with the United States, at least on the negotiation table. This is the political, the purpose. Toward the South Korea, a nuclear weapon, so-called asymmetric capability, is the best convenient tool to dominate inter-Korean relations and to overpower the economically superior South Korea. So they have all these kind of effects in mind.
Right. So what you're saying is that this missile launch, I suppose, cannot be seen as an independent act, but it's collectively it's an advancement of its nuclear weapons, I suppose.
Right. Exactly.
Now, so Seoul and Washington, as our Kim Hyun-bin reported, is actually beginning or has begun talks on THAAD, on bringing the THAAD system here on the peninsula. Now, how will the introduction of this U.S.'s anti-missile defense system change the geopolitical landscape in this region?
Well, for defense of South Korea, yes, it is meaningful. It has a meaningful impact. When we talk about how to deter North Korean nuclear threat, we have to see a larger picture. For example, we need the capability in 4 stages, such as preemption, and defense, and protection, and retaliation. So the THAAD system, if deployed here, will strengthen our defense system. So far, we have only a single-layer defense system. You know already, we have a PAC-2 missiles. It can intercept the enemy missiles at the altitude of 15 to 20 kilometers. But by introducing THAAD missiles, at least we can try twice. But we have also dilemma here. The first dilemma is the defense itself is not sufficient enough. Well, definitely, we need more capability to retaliate and to preempt North Korea. And also, another dilemma is that it can complicate the situation in this region. So it will deteriorate our relations with China while prompting the improvement of our relations with Japan, and also it will deepen the confrontation between the China and the U.S., etc., etc.
Right. A series of events there. Yeah. Now, let's talk about China. China has so far been reluctant, to say the least, of joining in on South Korean, U.S.'s and other international partners' efforts to toughen sanctions on North Korea. Now, first, will North Korea's rocket launch change or impact China's stance? Let me ask you that first.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, but we have to think about the 2 different phases of China, 2 different schools in China, within China. A so-called pragmatic school in China regards North Korea as a diplomatic burden, an economic burden, but while the conservative schools regard North Korea still as the only ally. So they believe they cannot abandon North Korea in any situation. So this is the basic background why China so far has hesitated to jump in a stronger sanction against North Korea. So yes, you can say the consecutive provocations by North Korea, nuclear test, and this time rocket launching, will further prompt the Chinese anger, but still China has a dual stance, particularly when we think about China's confrontation with the U.S. in the Southeast Sea and with Japan. And China, I think, will continue to protect. It's the only military ally in North Korea. So that's why basically I believe, of course, there should be some ups and downs, but basically China's dual stance will go on.
But now let me add a layer to that. You mentioned China and U.S. confrontation, but so Seoul and Washington's decision to bring about this U.S. anti-missile defense system on the Korean Peninsula, that will have an impact on China's position, will that not?
Oh, yes, of course. Basically, China perceives North Korea's nuclear game as a game between China and the U.S. The U.S. is strengthening an alliance with Japan and South Korea. So China believes it as an encirclement against China. So, that's why any military actions on the framework of alliance between South Korea and the United States, China will try to perceive it as a game against China. So this is unavoidable on this situation. As you know, we have now so-called new neo-Cold War structure emerging in this region. So this kind of perception is inevitable. That's our dilemma situation, yes.
Right, very difficult situation that we're finding in the Northeast Asian region. Now, from about 3 hours, less than 3 hours from now, the UN Security Council is convening an emergency meeting to address this North Korea's latest rocket or missile launch. Now, what kind of sanctions do we expect from the UNSC? I mean, does the Security Council even have any cards left to sanction North Korea?
That's also a very difficult question too, you know. Well, so far the UN Security Council has adopted 5 resolutions plus 2 chairperson's statement against North Korea since 2006. You know. So it already includes all variety of sanction measures in those resolutions. Right. But still, we hope and we want this time a new additional resolution, a lot different, qualitatively, a lot different from the previous one. For example, South Korea may want a prohibition of entry of all North Korean vessels in the harbors of member states of United Nations, and also much far encompassing, you know, the financial sanctions against North Korea. I don't know whether this type of resolution will be adopted or not, but still the key is how deeply and how positively China will jump into the new resolution.
Right, so I suppose what we can do to North Korea to stop any further provocations or to really, you know, put a hold to that China factor is absolutely critical there.
That's right.
Now, I want you to give us a prediction on the unpredictable North Korea. So what is that regime's course of action from here on? What's its next move?
We have to know, you know, what the nuclear weapon development schedule he has in his mind, you know. But I think I can imagine what kind of the schedule he has, you know. He already achieved the atomic bomb capability, and probably he may have achieved boosted the fission bomb capability through the 4th nuclear test 1 month ago. And then now North Korea is approaching the hydrogen bomb capability. You know. So Kim Jong-un definitely wants the hydrogen bomb capability, and then he will demonstrate delivery vehicle capabilities. You know. That's the reason why they launched the long-range rocket like this. You know. After that, when they think North Korea's possession of nuclear weapon is now recognized as a status quo by the international community, then North Korea will declare a moratorium. They will stop nuclear weapons and then try to make the weapons of their nuclear, the possession of their nuclear weapons as a new fait accompli. You know. So that means North Korea will continue nuclear test and launching of missiles for the time being. At least they achieve their old schedules in mind.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see how the UNSC or the global community together can put a stop to that. But as of now, it looks like Kim Jong-un is on schedule with his ambitions.
Well, you are asking me to find out a silver bullet or a cure-all panacea. North Korea has a die-hard nuclear ambition, and they pledges, and again they will not give up the nuclear weapons. So theoretically speaking, for the time being, I don't see any, you know, special ways to stop the nuclear weapons. Nevertheless, if we adopt very strong resolution once again, and China join it by cutting off their trade with North Korea and stop the supply of oil and food in North Korea, and then all member states of the UN participate in cutting off the channel of the so-called hard currencies. And then eventually threatening the survivability of North Korean regime itself. Then North Korea may succumb to that, but that's very difficult to achieve. You know.
Professor Kim Taewoo, currently chair professor and former president of Korea Institute for National Unification, thank you indeed for sharing your insights with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
So how far along is North Korea in terms of its interballistic missile technology? What about rocket technology? Now, experts here in Korea are saying that the rocket North Korea launched this time does not seem too much different from previous ones. Here's our Park Ji-won with more.
This is North Korea's 6th long-range rocket launch since the late 1990s, and the first since the last rocket launch in 2012. Experts here in South Korea say the rocket used this time seems almost identical to the one used in 2012.
When compared to the pictures of the rocket standing on the launch pad this time to the ones in 2012, the rocket's heights are almost identical. Also, when the time and location of each rocket's separation and the time taken to enter into an orbit are considered, the rocket used this time is almost the same model as the one used in 2012.
Analysts say it's highly likely that Pyongyang used the same kind of rocket from 2012, as the Kim Jong-un regime wouldn't want to bear the burden of any possibility of failure.
From what I can tell, North Korea has launched the same kind of Unha-3 rocket because Kim Jong-un wouldn't want to risk losing face by failing with this launch.
Although the rocket launched this time seems almost identical to the previous one, the launch pad has been enlarged by some 10 meters. Rocket scientists say it could be an indication that North Korea is aiming to develop larger rockets in the near future. The rocket launched Sunday would have an estimated flight range of about 6,500 kilometers if it were equipped with a warhead weighing about 1 ton or 1,000 kilograms. A lighter warhead would give the rocket a range of more than 10,000 kilometers and more. North Korea has been developing its rocket launch technology since the late 90s. Its first long-range rocket launched in 1998 was a failure, and the rocket fell into the ocean after flying roughly 1,600 kilometers. The second launch in 2006 exploded after some 40 seconds, and the next one in 2009 traveled some 3,800 kilometers before landing in the ocean. An Unha-3 rocket launched in April 2012 exploded about 135 seconds after liftoff, but another rocket launched in December of the same year put a so-called Earth observation satellite into orbit after 9 minutes. But experts say the satellite is not working properly as no pictures have been sent from the satellite since its entrance into orbit. Meanwhile, experts say it seems North Korea exploded the first stage of the rocket launch this time on purpose to avoid exposing their technology. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's National Assembly has unanimously condemned North Korea's rocket launch, calling the act a clear violation of UN resolutions banning Pyongyang from developing ballistic missile technology. Our senior parliamentary correspondent Kim Young-gil has more.
The ruling Saenuri Party on Sunday said North Korea's long-range rocket launch, conducted in defiance of warnings from the international community, cannot be justified by any means. Its floor leader Won Yu-chul also said South Korea should come up with its own countermeasures against Pyongyang.
South Korea should build its own nuclear and missile deterrents, which can be used for peaceful purposes. This way, we can strengthen our self-defense and check Pyongyang's aggression.
The ruling party also called on the opposition to allow for a vote on a long-pending counterterrorism bill to ensure the safety of the people. The ruling party says the bill needs to be passed in order to prepare for additional provocations or even terrorist threats from North Korea. The main opposition Minju Party warned that the North's continued provocations will only exacerbate international tensions and spark stronger calls to punish the regime.
This reckless provocation goes against the international community and will not help the regime perpetuate itself. The regime will have to bear the responsibility for conducting the test.
The Minju Party emphasized the importance of a strong and united international response to North Korea's provocations, including through a meaningful UN Security Council resolution. It too urged the government to take steps to bolster national security and ensure the safety of the people. Echoing its political counterparts, the minor opposition People's Party said the North rocket launch threatens the peace and stability of all of Northeast Asia. The party also called on the government to engage in dialogue with the North to resolve the current crisis. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
In light of that rocket launch, South Korea will decrease the number of workers allowed to stay overnight at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry said it'll limit the number of people allowed to stay overnight there to 500. Now, this is down from the current 650 for the safety of its citizens. South Korea began limiting entry to the complex since North Korea's fourth nuclear test early last month. The ministry added Seoul will cooperate with the international community to punish Pyongyang for its latest set of provocations and will undertake a review of its inter-Korean policies as well. On the economic front, the related ministries convened an emergency meeting to assess the potential impact on local and global financial markets. But local financial regulators were quick to respond by enhancing a 24-hour monitoring system. Shin Se-min reports.
Seoul's financial regulators are enhancing monitoring of the internal and external financial market, launching an official round-the-clock observation system following Pyongyang's long-range rocket launch Sunday morning. During an emergency meeting, financial representatives went over the potential impact and discussed ways to deal with the possible risks to the local market. Korea's finance ministry said, given previous experiences, it is unlikely that the North's provocation will have a major impact on local financial markets, adding the economy has strong fundamentals. But they did not rule out the potential for market volatility, as the global economy is faced with continuous low global oil prices and an unstable Chinese economy. The finance ministry added, however, that it will cooperate with related ministries and take action if necessary. During a separate contingency meeting convened by the Bank of Korea, the central bank said it will tighten market oversight even during the Lunar New Year holiday. Stock and foreign exchange markets in South Korea and in other Asian regions, including Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan, are closed during the Lunar New Year holiday, which runs until February 10th. The Financial Services Commission said while working in hand with related ministries, it'll go over the contingency plans and risk management procedures to take an immediate action if necessary. The Finance Ministry has scheduled a macroeconomic meeting on Wednesday to check the long-term economic effects on the local market. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, today is the second day of a 5-day-long holiday here in Korea. It's the Lunar New Year holiday, and we wanted to find out how the average South Korean felt about North Korea's rocket launch. Arirang News went out to meet some of them.
While the provocation set off alarms across the world and sparked international condemnation, average South Koreans were not too concerned.
North Korea has launched rockets multiple times in the past, demanding international aid. It was scary at first, but now I don't feel anything.
I heard it on the news and people around me weren't too concerned, and the same goes for me.
The government has condemned the launches and there have been sanctions, but it doesn't really affect the average person.
This is not the first time they've done something like this. It seems as though it's just a regular event for them.
But some did express concern, saying Pyongyang should have given it more thought, and they worried how it might affect the future of inter-Korean relations.
The international community opposes nuclear development. I worry the launch will heighten tensions in the region.
I just think it's a shame. We are a divided nation, and I was hoping that we could achieve a unification through dialogue. But North Korea is being one-sided and pushing ahead with provocations.
Others were hoping that North Korea would join the international community and hope for a better future.
It's the Lunar New Year holiday. I mean, it's a day for families to get together. Pyongyang's actions are just reckless. It should join efforts for peace and reconciliation.
We don't want any threats. We want peace and comfort. It's upsetting that North Korea is taking actions like these. I hope there's a good outcome for the two Koreas.
The general public seemed to be in agreement that more preparation should be made on the South Korean side in the event of further provocations, while North Korea should join international efforts for peace on the peninsula.
Well, that does it for this special edition of Arirang News. I'm Moon Gan-young. I thank you, everyone, for watching. For those of you here in Korea, I hope you're enjoying a wonderful Lunar New Year holiday with your loved ones. And I'll be back with our regular programming on Tuesday on News Center.